Welcome to Pick Up and Deliver, the podcast where I pick up my audio recorder when I drop my kid off at school and deliver an episode to you while I walk home. I'm Brendan Riley. Well, greetings, listeners. Today is February 14th. Happy Valentine's Day. I hope that you and yours are enjoying one another's company and thinking about romance, perhaps. My episode today is not going to be about romance, but instead about friendship and compatriotism. That's not the word I'm looking for. Hanging out with people and enjoying their company. One of the questions that popped up in the Pick Up and Deliver Guild was an inspiration for this episode, and that was if I could have my ideal game day with whomever I wanted to come play games with me, who would that be with and what would it be? I have to say, this is a difficult question. You know, another version of this question appeared earlier, many months ago in the guild, and it was something along the lines like, if you could play games, have a table, have famous people join you at the table, who would that be and why? So, like a professor, I am going to prevaricate and philosophize and dither around the question more than answering the question itself, because I think the conversation about the question is what makes it interesting, and then toward the end I'll try to get to it. So my first thought as I was thinking about what is my ideal game day was that I've had many ideal game days. For me, an ideal game day is one where I get to have people I enjoy spending time with play games with me, and the circumstances of my life at that moment mean that I can enjoy that without guilt, or guilt over not having gotten work done, or regret over leaving people by themselves, or interfering with the schedule or something like that. So when I think about game days in the past that have been ideal, like there have been a couple days where we had friends come over for games all day, or I have a friend who hosts, my game design partner Rob hosts a game con once or twice a year at his house, and when we play games there, we play games all day. And if I've arranged ahead of time to be able to do that and not feel like I'm neglecting my family or neglecting my work, honestly, those days are already pretty close to perfect. Or when I went to Origins in 2017, that was a series of perfect game days for me, where the only reason we're there is to play games. We get up in the morning, we have breakfast, we go play games. We play games all day. It's really hard to get much better than that already for me. So, from one perspective, I take the Elwood P. Dowd approach. When I'm playing games, Elwood P. Dowd says in the movie Harvey, I always have a wonderful time wherever I am and whoever I'm with. I can't imagine another place I'd be other than here with you fine people. And, you know, sometimes I feel that way, or a lot of times I feel that way. That when I go to play games, most of the time, that's my experience. So it's hard for me to imagine an idealized game day because I get to have them. Nonetheless, that doesn't feel like the spirit of the question. So I'm going to explore the spirit of the question in a couple ways. The first is a second caveat, and that's what I will call the musicals exemption. So for a long time, I really didn't like musicals, and I still don't generally lean into them, although sometimes I will. I will be more willing to go to one if people tell me it's great than I used to be. But part of the reason I didn't like musicals is, to me, it doesn't make any sense that people are singing. The basic premise of the musical is that it's expressionism. This idea that the feelings and ideas people have are expressed in song rather than in word. And the nature of the singing is not part of the story necessarily, but an expression of the story. And so you're just supposed to ignore the fact that everybody's singing. I've always enjoyed musicals that work their way around this. You know, musicals about theater people, where they sing because they all know the same songs and they all are theater people. I've always enjoyed those more than regular musicals. or like the Buffy the Vampire Slayer musical episode where they actually build in a diegetic reason that everybody's singing musicals and there's music playing. I really enjoyed that, in part because it helps me get over my admittedly dumb prejudice against musicals in general. I bring this up because this is a problem I have with trying to understand or conceive in my head the 5 famous people question, or the who, if I could play games with anybody, who would I play them with question. So if I could play games with 5 famous people in history, who would they be? I don't know that I would want to play a game. Like, if I had the chance to sit down with Abraham Lincoln for a couple hours, I don't want to play a game. I want to talk to him about his life and talk to him about the challenges he faced as president during the Civil War and so on and so forth. You know, that the idea that I would play a game during the precious few minutes I had with these famous people is a second hurdle that I have difficulty leaping. Nonetheless, I soldier on for the sake of you, my dear listener. So with those 2 caveats out of the way, so let's assume that in addition to a game with the famous people, I'm also allowed to spend as much time as I like with them outside of the game on a different day, perhaps, talking about life or whatever. Or another way to imagine it is I win a charity event of some sort that allows me to play a game or set up a game day where I can play games with famous people. So I don't get to spend time with them otherwise. It is particularly setting up a game day, sort of like the people who will buy a game with Blue Peg, Pink Peg during the Jack Vassal Memorial Auction or whatever. That's the sort of thing that I guess I'm imagining here. And by imagining that scenario, then I can have the foundation on which I can build the idea of an ideal game day. And imagining that it's not just spending time with my friends. So I wanted to talk through 3 different versions of my ideal game day. The first one I wanted to talk about was with fictional characters. If this is an idealized game day and I get to, play with whomever I want, why wouldn't I play with some fictional characters I would enjoy spending time with? So we'll start. How about a game of Cerebria with Ender and Bean from Ender's Game? So Ender's Game is a novel that I really admired when I was young. I used to read it once or twice a year, well into my 20s. Orson Scott Card publicly has some pretty odious views about homosexuality, which are informed by his religion, but nonetheless I find abhorrent. So I've cooled on him as an author just because in my head I can't separate the two. But Ender's Game is still a pretty remarkable piece of fiction for its time. And the character of Ender and the character of Bean are both really interesting characters who approach the world in a really complex way. So it would be fun for me to find another friend who's really good at Cerebria, and I wouldn't say I'm really good, but who understands it well. And then we'd play on teams with me teamed up with either Ender or Bean, and this other person teamed up with the other. It would be interesting to get to spend time with these characters doing a strategic game, but in a team situation, so I get to know them a little bit, or get to share experience with them. So that's 2 hours of the game day that I think, a fictional game day that would be really fun. Then it'd be great to take a break and play a party game, something like Monikers, with the characters from How I Met Your Mother. I think it'd be really fun to play with those folks. Marshall in particular feels like he and I would get along really well. Although one of my students once said I seemed a lot like Ted. I think it was because Ted's an intellectual, and probably in class I have a bit of the persona he does. But I think it would be fun to hang out with the How I Met Your Mother group in a casual social situation. So doing something like a party game like Monikers or the Game of Things. That would be pretty fun with that group. And I think maybe with my wife, because she really likes that show too. So the second game I'd play would be Monikers with the How I Met Your Mother crew. Perhaps the next game I would play would be a 2-hour game. It'd be a round of one of my favorites, A Study in Emerald by Martin Wallace. And I would pick as the people to play with me, Thursday Next, and perhaps one of the other friends from that novel series, maybe her friend who hunts werewolves. I can't remember his name. They're both lateral thinkers, people who exist across literature, so it would be fun to play a game that melds literary and real world together. You know, she probably knows Sherlock Holmes or has met him. And so, if you haven't read The Eyre Affair, and that's Eyre, or any of the books that follow from it by Jasper Fforde, these are books about imagining that the world of books exists in an alternate reality, and when you read a book, you're kind of seeing in your mind's eye people acting out the story, but those people who are acting exist as the character as well, and the main character is a person from our world who actually is able to travel into the book world, and her name is Thursday Next. It takes place in an alternate future as well, so there's time travel and there's weird science fiction stuff. She's got like a robotic arm that she lost during the extended Boer War, which had lasted 100 years. It's weird. They're fun books, but really weird. And so I think it would be great to spend a little time with Thursday Next and one of the other folks from the Eyre Affair in that series, to get to know them a little bit. And A Study in Emerald, like I said, is this game that has lots of ideas crossing boundaries and so on. And then I think it would be fun to do some role-playing. So maybe doing a role-playing game with somebody who's very imaginative. Maybe a cyberpunk game with Spider Jerusalem from Transmetropolitan and Kati Jones from Netrunner. Yeah, maybe those two. It would be fun to play like a science fiction themed. It'd be fun to play a science fiction themed role-playing game with them, something like Shadowrun. So maybe that would round out my day. That'd be a nice start if I was doing fictional characters. So I had two other versions I wanted to share with you. One is, let's say that I came into a lot of money and I decided to drop a lot of it on the Tom Vassell Memorial Fund, and I could just buy a whole game day at Gen Con or Origins with a bunch of different game people. Who would I want to play with, and what would I want to play? I think it would be fun to play with all the podcasters I listen to. You know, a game with the Blue Peg, Pink Peg folks. Playing something that they already really like Coimbra, or one of the Vladimir Suchi games, you know, Underwater Cities. I know that's one they played lately. Or Prodigal's Club, they all enjoyed. One of those games, that would be fun to play with them. The Brawling brothers, it would be interesting to play a game with them, although I'm not sure. I've only listened to that show for a few months, so I'm not really sure which game I would want to play with them. It would be great to play A Touch of Evil with Jamie Kagi and the guys from the Secret Cabal. Or to play one of the Mind Clash games with Chris from the Secret Cabal. I know he really likes Trickerion, for instance. Those are games I enjoy quite a bit. So, you know, getting to play games with people I listen to in podcasts has been a delight when I've had the chance. When I went to Origins, I actually arranged to play. I played a game with Patrick from Blue Peg, Pink Peg. I played with Dan from the podcast of Nonsensical Gamers. I played with the third person from Board Game Blitz, who is no longer on the show as much. Because it was Ambi and Crystal and the third woman, and I can't remember her name, but she met us, my daughter and I, and we played Five Tribes and Bohnanza. I also got to play Bohnanza with Isaac Childress, which was really fun. So getting to spend a little time... Oh, and I played Seven Wonders with Bruce Glasgow, the designer of Betrayal at House on the Hill, the original designer. So it's interesting to get to spend time with people who've played games and just to build a connection, a memory of that person in my mind. So getting to do that sort of thing would be really fun as well. I would really enjoy playing Arkham Horror with Z Garcia. I really enjoyed his solo play of that on YouTube, for instance. The Arkham Horror card game, I mean. finally, when I think about, like, if let's say I'm planning a game day, I have a day to myself, I can invite whomever I want, just my friends around here. Like I said, often that's my perfect day, but I get to pick all the games. Here's the selection I would like. First, I'd like to play a heavy game. Start off the day with something that I've played before with other people who've played before, so we could play reasonably fast, play a robust game, have it go relatively quick. But that would be fun. Then I would really like to play a small game or two, something that's like a half an hour or less to kind of cleanse the palate, and then jump into a big, heavy big, trashy Ameritrash game like Zombicide or Last Night on Earth or A Touch of Evil, or I don't know, maybe something I haven't played. But I'd prefer to stick into stuff I've played there. Maybe Fortune and Glory, one of the Flying Frog games. That's a good second game for me. Then a party game with a bunch of people. I really like Two Rooms and a Boom, or a nice game of Secret Hitler or The Resistance, one of these games where you're trying to figure out who's doing what. That's a really nice change of pace, a different kind of game, even leaning into something like Dark Moon, but maybe that's a little more board gamey than I want. Something sort of on the heavier party game side. And then I'd love to wrap up with a new game where one person, maybe me, has learned the game and is willing to teach it, and then a bunch of us are going to learn to try it, and we'll try something new and meaty and interesting that sort of fills out the day with a finale. So I guess that would kind of be my ideal game day if I got to just pick what I'm doing, and then invited people that I would enjoy spending that time with. Which, like I said, that's kind of what happens when I go to events where I get to play all day, as I do something like that. Thanks for taking the time to listen to Pick Up and Deliver. I would love to hear what your ideal game day is. Thanks to Jason Keglevitz for this question over in the Pick Up and Deliver Guild. What else do you want to know? If you could play a game with a fictional person and held all those caveats that I said in mind, who would it be and why? I guess you could answer the historical people too. I didn't answer that one, but maybe in another day. Well, that's me. I'm home, so thanks for joining me. I hope that your next walk is as pleasant as mine was. Bye-bye.
Brought to you by Rattlebox Games.